Your host, Calvin Timms, and I would like to welcome you guys back. If you guys noticed, it's a little bit later for my AFC East breakdown than originally anticipated. I was planning on recording this on Sunday and started doing some yard work, landscaping out in the yard this last weekend with the nice weather. And of course, I go and rent a trench edger, never used it before, to build some landscaping beds outside my house. And they told me my cable line was a little bit further away from the house than it actually was. I ended up cutting right through it. So just finally got some internet back today. So I'm happy to be back and recording today's episode, the AFC East breakdown. Normally today, I'd be recording the second podcast of the week, but tomorrow night I'll be recording that as well, which will be the NFC East. But thank you guys for joining me, and please follow me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the video. Just get all the plugs out of the way right now. Hope everybody's having a good week, good start to the summer. It's been pretty nice weather over here in Ohio the last couple days. And yeah, I'm ready to get this thing started. In terms of NFL news, there's not been anything really major the last couple days, so nothing really to break down there. But today we're going to start with the NFC or the AFC East and the Buffalo Bills on the roster. So the Buffalo Bills, they have the same coaching staff as they did last year. Nothing really changed there. The main difference is they lost their offensive coordinator, Brian Daboll. He went to be the New York Giants head coach, and it's going to be interesting. Brian Daboll basically ran the entire offense. Sean McDermott is a defensive head coach. Really trusted Daboll for that side of the ball. So it'll be a new offense this year, but they've got Ken Dorsey. I think he comes over from the Green Bay Packers, if I believe. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head where he came from, but he is very well renowned, so it shouldn't be a major change over from last year. But yeah, it's going to be. I'm excited for it, but we'll see how that goes. So in terms of roster, the Bills, they had a pretty boring NFL draft last couple weeks. They added a few people in free agency, nothing major. They got Von Miller on the defensive side of the ball, signed him to a massive deal, re-signed the Stephon Diggs to a massive deal as well. And other than that, really not too many other people have left, not too many other people have joined. So yeah, I'm excited to see what they can do this year. I am a New England Patriots fan, so I'm going to save them for last in this one, but it's kind of cool to see another team in my division finally doing well, but I do hope we can edge them out this year. Not loving our chances, to be honest with you. Josh Allen is my number one quarterback in the NFL right now, and it's tough playing against him. I know how the other teams in the AFC East feel playing us for all those years. So Buffalo Bills primed and ready to go. So for fantasy, the biggest impacts, the offensive line really hasn't changed. So that's a plus. Anytime that the same offensive line, when you're a good offensive line like the Bills have had the last couple of years, if you have the same five guys together, they're not really aging out at this point. They're not super old. Some of them are a little bit older, but they're not to the age where you should see a definite drop off in their production. So same offensive line is great for fantasy. It just means that they're going to have cohesion. They're not going to be struggling. And the AFC is a powerhouse, as I keep talking about, with the potential for like 14 of the 16 teams to be playoff teams. There's some really good defenses in the AFC right now, some really good defenses across the NFL. So having a cohesive offensive line is a big plus for this team. Now you get into the actual skill players for fantasy. You got Josh Allen, again, my number one quarterback in the NFL right now. He's really a do-it-all quarterback. He's got that super high rushing floor, Cam Newton-esque of a few years ago when Cam Newton was one of the best fantasy quarterbacks for like 4 or 5 years in a row, just because he has such a high rushing floor. Now, that's something we'll talk about as we go along here, but Josh Allen having a super high rushing floor is a great plus for fantasy. And he's probably got if he's not the best arm in the NFL, he's one of the top 3. I mean, Patrick Mahomes comes to mind, Justin Herbert comes to mind, but man, Josh Allen has a cannon on his arm. So yeah, Josh Allen right now for fantasy football, my number 1 overall quarterback. I really love the upside there, but a lot of people are a little nervous just because of the green name here, James Cook, that they added in the 2nd round. So running back wise, it's a little bit of the same from the last couple years. Devin Singletary, he's going to be the starter for now. They took James Cook in the 2nd round. Everyone on fantasy Twitter is just all over James Cook right now. I've seen him going anywhere from the 103 to the 209. So it's a very polarizing class. James Cook is a very good pass catcher. And if you didn't know, because it hasn't been talked about enough, he is Dalvin Cook's younger brother. He is very similar to Dalvin Cook, except he's about 30 pounds lighter than Dalvin Cook. So that's his only knock. Maybe it's down to 20. I think he put on some weight this offseason, but when you're a 205-pound running back at 5'9", I believe he is, it's not great for workhorse role, but should be a really, really good pass catcher. He's just very smooth in his hand usage when he's getting the ball. So I really like him for fantasy, but here's the problem with these running backs, both Devin Singletary and James Cook. Devin Singletary had a good run at the end of last season, but James Cook and Devin Singletary played 2 completely different roles. And Zach Moss is basically non-existent on this team anymore. Duke Johnson, he's irrelevant as well. So for fantasy purposes, it's these 2 guys. Now, I think that they're trying to go more towards a running game for this team, which means that they're probably going to try and limit Josh Allen a little bit in that department. But Josh Allen is a very good decision maker. I think that when the time is appropriate, he's going to keep the ball and steal a ton of touchdowns on the ground because that's just who he is. He's a tough playing mother trucker, if you know what I mean. So Josh Allen is going to have a lot of rushing touchdowns on the ground. That limits Devin Singletary and James Cook. James Cook is not going to get a lot of the passing touchdowns because their wide receivers are just amazing, and Josh Allen doesn't really throw to the wide receiver or to the running backs. He just doesn't really target them in the red zone. So I think both of these guys struggle because they kind of eat into each other. Neither one of them's a workhorse. They both can do what the other one can do fairly well, but they're just going to limit each other quite a bit in their upside. And then Josh Allen is going to steal a ton of touchdowns on the ground. I think the biggest impact of them going more towards a running game that it's going to have on Josh Allen, I think that his rushing yards per game is going to be coming down, and that could have a big impact for fantasy because we all know that rushing is just way better for fantasy. And I still think he's going to be getting the rushing touchdowns, which is great. But if he's not getting the rushing yards to just kind of pair with that, that is a little bit of a nerf to Josh Allen. So that's where you could see someone like Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, some of those guys stealing the top spot back for fantasy football purposes only. So I do think that James Cook and Devin Singletary are a very good real-life NFL combo. But for fantasy, it's a little sketchy for me. Now, like I said earlier, James Cook is a little polarizing. Everyone is kind of moving on from Devin Singletary. They're kind of acting like he's non-existent. He's going to have a good role in this team, but he's just not going to be great for fantasy. He's going to be solid, but not elite, right? He'll be able to get you, I don't know, anywhere between 7 to 12 points a week probably, which isn't great, but it's not going to kill you at the same time. Probably an RB3 if I had to put my money on it. And James Cook, I think he has low-end RB2 value because he might get a lot more pass catching, which is great for fantasy, but I don't think he's going to get nearly as much attempts through the rushing game, and I think that the yardage totals will be about the same as Devin Singletary. So he'll probably outscore Devin Singletary, but I don't see either one of these guys getting a ton of touchdowns to put them into the mid RB2 territory conversation, right? So that's the problem with the running backs here, and my thoughts on those guys. Now we switch over to the wide receivers. We got Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. Really like both of those guys. They did take Khalil Shakir in the 5th round. They have Jake Kumaro. They signed him to a longer deal. And they brought in Jamison Crowder as a free agent this offseason to play the slot for the team. It's going to be interesting. This is the best chance for Gabe Davis to finally break out. And I know he's been all over the map. And again, I talked about this last time. Everyone wants their wide receivers to break out in year 1. And if they don't, then they're a bust. They're trash. They're never going to make it. Gabe Davis went on a tear in the NFL playoffs last year. He had 4 touchdowns in a playoff game last year. That's crazy. I think it was like 200 yards. The dude is very, very talented. He just has never gotten the opportunity. They've always kind of made him the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 or 4 for the team because they had Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley as well. So Gabe Davis has always produced when given an opportunity. He just wasn't getting a ton of opportunities so far. Right now, he is officially the number 2 wide receiver on the team. I don't see anybody really being able to push him for that for fantasy. So I really like Gabe Davis quite a bit. I think that he could definitely vault into the wide receiver 2 territory, maybe even like a maybe 18 to 20 pick or overall wide receiver this year. And if he plays like he did in that playoff game, man, top 12 is definitely within reason. So love that quite a bit for Gabe Davis. Stephon Diggs, you're still definitely taking him as the number 1 on this offense. He has definite wide receiver 1 capabilities with a like 15 to 18 floor as long as he doesn't get injured, right? And then Jamison Crowder is kind of sneaky for PPR leagues. I think that he's going to have a lot of opportunity. He's literally taken the Cole Beasley role, and Cole Beasley would be able to get like 8 to 10 catches a game because he was just getting targeted with the dump offs. Wasn't getting any yardage or touchdowns, which is kind of Jamison Crowder's MO of his career. But if you're in a full PPR, I think that Jamison Crowder might have a very, very high floor this season. And if you're in your rookie drafts right now, Khalil Shakir, I think he's going as like a 4th round pick. He's worth a stab if you have a taxi squad, but we're probably 2-3 years away from him even being viable, in my opinion. You can see he's behind Gabe Davis. I don't think he's ever going to pass Gabe Davis. So maybe someday they can transition Stephon Diggs more to the slot as he gets a little bit older and put him opposite Gabe Davis in like a year or 2. But I just don't really see that happening. So he's not going to have an opportunity unless they get rid of Gabe Davis or Stephon Diggs, and I just don't see that happening. So I'm willing to stash him for a couple years as the expectation, but that's about it for Khalil Shakir. And the rest of the guys, Jake Kumaro, Isaiah McKenzie, all these guys, they're going to have games probably where one of them breaks out, but I'm not excited about it whatsoever. And then the last position, skill position here, is the tight end position. Dawson Knox is Man, they added quite a few people. They added Dawson Knox. Well, they had Dawson Knox. They added O.J. Howard from Tampa Bay, former first-round pick, if I remember the same Jonnu Smith and David Njoku draft class. I think all 3 of those guys were first-round picks, if I can remember that right. They added Jalen Weidermeyer in the after the draft. Actually, he was undrafted. Tommy Sweeney is a blocking guy. Quentin Morris is a blocking guy. So for fantasy purposes, O.J. Howard is the tough one to gauge here because he was a first-round pick because he's so gifted athletically, but he just has not managed to really do much for fantasy ever since he's been in the league. Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Bucks, they just really didn't trust him very much. He got injured. Bruce Arians didn't trust him when it was him and Jameis. It's just he's never really been able to win over his quarterback or his coaching staff. So I still believe in the talent, but Yeah, I'm not paying anything for OJ Howard at this point in his career. And Dawson Knox is the interesting one because he was a third-round pick in 2019. So this is year 4 for him. Year 3, we definitely started to see a breakout. Year 4, we could really see him take a step forward. I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity as well because even though they want to go more towards the running game, I think the Buffalo Bills were one of the highest passing percentage teams in the NFL, which is great when you have Josh Allen as your quarterback. But if you pull that back even a little bit, there's still going to be more than enough opportunity for all the rest of these pass catchers on this team. So I'm not worried about that from a too many mouths to feed standpoint. But yeah, I think Dawson Knox has a definite opportunity here to make a splash. So somebody that's kind of sneaky in the tight end department, worth throwing like a second round pick at if you need a tight end, and he could definitely pay off. So that's the Buffalo Bills. I think that they're probably going to finish as one of the best teams in the NFL this year. And yeah, definitely a lock for playoffs in my opinion. Again, I'm a Patriots fan, so I'm not rooting for them, but they're just very, very good. And I am kind of happy for Buffalo Bills fans. It's been a long time since they've been good. It's been a long time since a lot of the teams in the AFC East are good. And I want the problem with the Patriots, being a Patriots fan, is for many, many years we had Tom Brady, right? We never really saw any competition from the rest of the guys. It's not that they weren't good teams here and there. There were some good squads that were in our division a few times, but I want us to earn it. You know what I mean? I want to feel like we're earning our playoff spot, and we didn't have that for a long time. It was kind of just, the Patriots are going to win. Is anybody else going to make playoffs from this division? So now if we make playoffs, we got to beat out some good teams. So with that said, I'm going to roll right into the Miami Dolphins after I take a drink here. Man, I don't know. One thing and if you guys are watching this on YouTube, let me know down below in the comments. I do check them. Nobody's giving me any comments yet. Sad boy. But one of the things I need to work on is being a better host. Do you guys like a more professional host, or do you guys not really care if I goof around a little bit while I'm recording this? Let me know down below if you're watching. I'm more than capable of not being so serious, but I'm also capable of really tightening it up as well. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are when you get a chance. But that said, going into the Miami Dolphins, and this is where it gets a little bit interesting. New head coach Mike McDaniel coming over from the San Francisco 49ers. He brings a whole new coaching staff, so new defensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator. They had Brian Flores last year. He got fired, suing the Miami Dolphins in the NFL for getting fired. Whatever your thoughts are on that, it's just, kind of a interesting situation. But they brought over Mike McDaniel. And man, they have made moves this offseason. I love the moves that they've made this offseason. Man, again, it sucks being a Patriots fan because I like what a lot of these teams have done in this division this offseason. And yeah, it's pretty fun to watch what's going on here. And again, if we make playoffs, we earned it. Because all right, so they got Tua Tagovailoa. Sure. Former first round pick. I think he went number 4, number 3 overall that year. Finally, his time to shine. They brought in Teddy Bridgewater to be his backup. They signed Chase Edmonds in free agency. They just brought in Sony Michel last week. Brought in Raheem Mostert. They had Myles Gaskin. And then they, kept kind of the old guard, Myles Gaskin. You can see them all there on the number 4, number 5 for the running backs. But Gaskin, Jared Dokes, and Salvin Ahmed. And then they brought in Zaquandre White. No idea who that was. Never scouted him during the pre-draft process. So they brought in a lot of guys there. Offensive line, they brought in Teron Armstead and Connor Williams. So really built out the left side of their line. They are hoping that the right side of their line is pretty good and pretty decent. And then they signed Mike Gesicki to a long-term contract. They brought in Cedric Wilson, traded for Tyreek Hill. They've just been making moves left, right, and center. So there is no more excuses for Tua. If he is not good this year, it's over. I mean, they're going to move on from him and try and get a new quarterback. And they did give up quite a few picks for Tyreek, but I think they still have a first next year. So, it wouldn't be terrible to just try and move up for a quarterback in next year's amazing quarterback class. So, it is time for Tua to step up or shut up, And that said, I love Tua this year. I think that he is going to be probably the problem with Tua is he doesn't have a lot of mobility, but he can be extremely accurate. He doesn't have the best arm, but he does make pretty good decisions as well. So I think that Tua, and this is something, whatever your thoughts are on PFF, I have my moments where I love them and I hate them at the same time. But one of the stats that they continuously brought up last year about Tua Tagovailoa was that he constantly masked a lot of the problems that they had on the team last year. They had one of the worst offensive lines ever recorded from PFF last year. And Tua was not getting sacked at a higher rate than like Joe Burrow or some of these other quarterbacks, right? And Tua was able to elevate that offensive line while being the worst offensive line ever graded by them. And he was still decent behind it. So the fact that they've really gone out to try and rebuild the left side of the offensive line to kind of shift around some of the players and make them good on fill the other holes. They took the good players and just kind of made a new group of 5 here. I really like that. And then, like I said, they brought in a ton of weapons, a new head coach with Mike McDaniel, who's bringing over a Kyle Shanahan type of system to this team. It's going to be fun to watch. I really like that quite a bit. So Tua, I think that he can definitely be a probably top 10 quarterback if everything goes well, with a kind of a floor of 15, 16, even if things don't go amazingly well, just because of how many weapons he has and how explosive those weapons are. So I really like Tua for fantasy this year. I think that he's quite a value in terms of the quarterback rankings right now. Now you go over to the running backs, and I want none of these guys. I actually heard the fantasy footballers, they were giving out some of their stats. They ranked all their guys. And Jason with the Ballers was extremely happy because he wanted none of the Dolphins running backs. And honestly, I'm in the same boat. Raheem Mostert, he's old. He is very, very old. He's a journeyman running back across the NFL. Not putting a ton of trust in him, but he is Mike McDaniel's guy. Sony Michel, he's been around the last couple years, former first-round pick, got his jersey. Always respect you, Sony. You won us a Super Bowl. Love you for that, brother. But he's kind of, what's his role going to be? He's kind of transitioned to more of a vet back who's just come in and he takes up a lot of the carries. He's good enough, but he's not elite, right? Chase Edmonds always had that problem with the Cardinals. He just never got the opportunity to be the bell cow guy. So I don't want any of these guys. I think that Myles Gaskin will have a role. I think that Jared Dokes will have a role. I think they'll even use Salvin Ahmed as well. So I want none of these guys until one of them shows or proves that they are the guy. And I'm willing to make an in-season trade for one of these guys, but preseason, I think that you're just gambling. It's pure luck if you hit on one of these guys. Mike Gesicki at the tight end position, they did re-sign him. He's kind of interesting for fantasy. So him and Tua have had a very good connection the last couple years. And for a tight end premium, he's very sneaky in my opinion. There was a stretch last year. I think Mike Gesicki was a top 3 tight end for multiple weeks. And yeah, he is very sneaky good for fantasy football. But the only thing I think that kind of hurts Mike Gesicki is the wide receiver core, which this is where it gets really interesting. They have Jalen Waddle, former first-round pick last year. I think he was, 5 overall last year or 7 overall last year. I don't remember. 6 overall. 6, yes, that's what it was, 6. brought in Tyreek Hill, paid a first. I think they paid a first, a third, a fourth, and whatever it was. 5 total picks for Tyreek Hill. Maybe it was 2 firsts. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. But Tyreek Hill over from Kansas City, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, just pure game breaker, right? He is so good, so good. I've talked about him many times. That's why I like Jameson Williams so much, is because he is mini Tyreek Hill. Not literally, he's probably bigger than Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is a midget on the field. But Tyreek Hill is just so quick in and out of his breaks, right? Change of direction, just so fluid and smooth. Jalen Waddle has a touch of that. Jameson Williams has a touch of that as well. Jameson Williams is probably better than Jalen Waddle at the change of direction, just picking up right where you left off. Oh, I'm going 20 miles an hour to the left. I'm going to stop on a dime, go to the right, and be about 15 in about 1 second. It's just crazy how fast these guys can accelerate. So the fact that these two together, it's going to be a problem for NFL defenses. I know there's been a lot of hype videos out there. Miami Dolphins are getting a lot of hate for it, but yeah, the deep ball is not to a specialty, and he's going to be throwing a lot of them because Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are going to be getting open all over the field. So really like both of these guys. For fantasy, I still think Tyreek Hill is going to be a wide receiver 1. I just think he's too explosive. You don't necessarily have to throw him a 70-yard bomb. I think you can throw him a 20-yard bomb, and he can go another 50 yards after that and get a touchdown. He's just so explosive and so good. Jalen Waddle, I think, is a little bit lower than Tyreek. I think he's probably going to finish somewhere in the 16 to 20 range, somewhere in there. A mid-round wide receiver 2, which is great for fantasy. Again, I talk about this all the time. It's dynasty football. You don't need 10, your whole roster doesn't have to be top 10 picks, right? It helps when it's top 10 picks. Yeah, it sets you up to win the title very easily. But that's just not reality. Not all these teams have this many elite options, right? But at the wide receiver position, the gap between like wide receiver 15 and wide receiver 8 is like half a point a game. It's crazy how small the gap is between the wide receivers. So I think that Jalen Waddle is going to be perfectly fine. I really like him for fantasy, and he's going to have solid weeks. He might have. We'll see if these two kind of alternate. That's my biggest fear for fantasy, is these two kind of alternate. Well, Tyreek Hill blows up this week, Jalen Waddle blows up next week, and it's just you're not really able to predict which one of the two it's going to be. But I think that Tyreek Hill has a very high floor. Jalen Waddle might have a little bit lower of a floor and ceiling, but I really like both of these guys. That's why I have Tyreek Hill is probably like, I don't know, he's probably going to finish for like 6 or 7 in fantasy. He's so explosive. Jalen Waddle, again, I think 16 to 20 in that range, and that's great. If you can get one of these guys on your team, maybe you get them at a discount because Tua and these hype videos are pushing them down. All in, all in. So that is the Miami Dolphins. Not a ton of work done on the defensive side of the ball, but they have a very good defense too. It'll be interesting to see if the new coaching regime is able to get as much out of them as former head coach Brian Flores. But yeah, it's a fun division, man. I'm telling you what, right now. All right, so next we're going to go to the New York Jets. And I'm saving my New England Patriots for last. And man, the Jets, it's hard not to root for them and not to want them to succeed. They've been so bad for so long that I honestly just feel bad for them at this point. But they had, in my opinion, one of the best drafts in the entire NFL this year. And if you look at the moves that they did, very interesting moves this offseason. The offensive line still a little bit interesting. It's the same 5 guys as last year. They added a left tackle in the 4th round, but it's nothing amazing. Nothing's really going to be changing there. Everyone thought they were going to go a lot harder on a tackle in the actual NFL draft, but they didn't. So they're rolling it back with these 5 guys, and I like this line a decent amount, but it could definitely be better for sure. So we'll see what they can do this year. They definitely need these guys to step up though. So we'll see what this offensive line does. But if this offensive line falters, it is going to kill this entire offense. So, yeah, a lot of this rides on this offensive line. Zach Wilson is still going to be the quarterback for the team, number 2 overall last year. I like Zach Wilson quite a bit, and people are just so out on Zach Wilson after 1 year. Again, guys, these guys are rookies. You got to give them a little bit of time to develop. You just got to let them. You guys let them experiment, especially at the quarterback position, right? Zach Wilson talked about this quite a bit last year, where everyone was dogging on him for throwing a bad throw. Oh, you threw a pick. Why'd you make that throw? Why did you do that? Well, I gotta learn. They need to learn. The NFL versus college differential of difficulty. It's such a wide gap, and unless you let these guys experiment a little bit on the field, they're not going to learn where the mistakes are, right? They're not going to know, oh, I can't throw this pass like I could in college, right? Without it being just picked off. And I get that. Let him make mistakes. They weren't going to compete last year anyway. They did not have a good enough roster last year to compete. So let him make mistakes. I am still all in on Zach Wilson going into year 2. So if you can get Zach Wilson as a discount, I think he has legitimate upside to be a top, to make a massive jump to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback this year. He has such a good rushing floor. You saw it in some games last year. He is very, very mobile, and I like that quite a bit. So, yeah, Zach Wilson still all in for me. And again, if this offensive line can take a step forward, that's just a big boost for Zach Wilson, in my opinion. Now, the biggest talking point from this last draft, and if you watch, again, I talked about PFF earlier, you can love them and you can hate them, but Breece Hall in the second round, I think it was their 4th pick or their 5th pick. They traded up for Breece Hall in the draft, and it was their 4th pick. Okay, so they had 3 firsts, and then he was the only second. They traded up in the second round to get Breece Hall, the running back out of Iowa State or Iowa, one of the two. I can picture him, the black and gold team, but yeah, state or not, I have no idea, to be honest with you. I don't remember. But Breece Hall is a JT level athlete. He's not as big as JT. Everyone just says, oh, he's as explosive as Jonathan Taylor, but he's not. Jonathan Taylor is a massive dude. He's like the size of a linebacker, Jonathan Taylor, while being that explosive. So that's why he's so good. Breece Hall is a little bit smaller, and that's not to take anything away from him, but he's still an extremely good athlete, but he's not JT. Come on, guys, let's calm it down a little bit. And again, this is the sad state of affairs we live in Dynasty. Why is Breece Hall, he hasn't played a snap. There's no reason he should be a top 6 Dynasty running back right now. No reason whatsoever. Like, what are we doing, guys? Come on. Let's be a little bit smarter. But Breece Hall, I think he comes in here. I think he has wide receiver or running back 1 potential, but I don't think that he's top 6 for Dynasty right now in time. It's too high. It's too much. I think that he has a, 9 to 12 baseline. I think that's roughly where he's going to finish. I think it all depends on how good he transitions to the NFL. He should transition just fine. But come on, he hasn't played a snap yet. He's very good in the passing game. Love that quite a bit. But these guys aren't going to make him a bell cow. They're just not going to do it. The Shanahan system, it's Mike LaFleur. Mike LaFleur, brother to Matt LaFleur, who is the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, right? The Green Bay Packers have a split backfield. They just do not let one guy run the entire backfield. So Breece Hall is probably going to have like 60% of the snaps. Probably. Michael Carter is probably going to have like 30, 35%. And then the rest is going to go to Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson and LaMichael Pirine and blah, 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 right? Michael Carter is still going to have a good role on this team. And yeah, I just don't see enough evidence right now to make Breece Hall that high. That said, again, I still have him as a running back 1, fringe running back 1, but I think he's going to be really good. That said, Michael Carter, I also think is going to be good for fantasy. We saw what he can do last year when Zach Wilson was actually out of the team, right? When they had the other quarterbacks come into the lineup, all of them dumped it off to Michael Carter a ton. Michael Carter is a very, very good pass catcher. He's very good. Think James Cook good, only better in my opinion. So Michael Carter, if Zach Wilson can learn to dump it off to Michael Carter, he's going to be very good for fantasy. But the biggest risk with this New York Jets team right now is just there are a lot of mouths to feed. And unlike the Buffalo Bills, where they were so pass happy it didn't really matter, I don't know if they're going to be that pass happy to feed all of these guys. So somebody's going to get left out. And I think Breece Hall is going to have less targets than people anticipate. Michael Carter's going to have more. And then when we get to some of these other positions here, people are going to be a little disappointed in those areas as well. But only time will tell. This is a guess at this point, but this is just an honest assessment of what the New York Jets are. So Michael Carter, again, I think that he's probably going to be like a upper 20s running back for fantasy, which is fine. If you have him, I think that he's not going to kill you if you have to spot start Michael Carter. That's my opinion. But we'll see. It all depends on if Zach Wilson dumps it off to him. So that's enough on the running back position for this team. Going into the tight end position, they did bring in C.J. Uzomah and Tyler Conklin, both free agents. Jeremy Ruckert out of Ohio State was a third-round pick. Not really too worried about Jeremy Ruckert for fantasy. He's about 2-3 years away from even being viable. I think that what their long-term plan is they would have him replace C.J. Uzomah because he's a little bit older. Tyler Conklin is only 26 years old. He's a young dude for having 4 years of experience at the tight end position. And he's also pretty good at just being a pass catcher for the team. He's a good blocker as well, so is C.J. Uzomah. So these guys are kind of very versatile in their skill sets. C.J. Uzomah is maybe a little bit more explosive than Tyler Conklin, but I think Tyler Conklin's a better pass catcher, in my opinion. So that's how these two kind of shake out. I'm taking steps on Tyler Conklin in my dynasty leagues because he's much cheaper than Uzomah, and I think that he's going to probably outproduce him if I had to put money on it. Uzomah has a very long history of injuries, hasn't been able to stay healthy, but he has also shown how explosive he can be when he stays healthy, if he can stay healthy. So for fantasy, I'm betting on Conklin over Uzomah, but I can see the arguments for Uzomah over Conklin. Again, both of these guys, I think they're going to probably finish as tight end twos. One of them will be the higher one. One will probably be a tight end 3. I just don't know. My money's on Tyler, but yeah, again, I would not be shocked if it was Uzomah over Conklin. So that's my thoughts on the tight end position. And for the wide receivers, the last position here, last skill position anyway, Garrett Wilson, first-round draft pick, number 10 overall. Everyone was kind of thinking that they might take someone else, like a Jameson Williams or Chris Olave. Nobody really knew who they were going to take with the pick. Traylon Burks was another one that I heard thrown around quite a bit. I think they really wanted Drake London, but he was taken by the Falcons at 8 overall. So they took Garrett Wilson at 10. Now, here is my thought process on Garrett Wilson. I'm going to take a drink real quick, but I'll share my thoughts here in 1 second. One thing they never tell you, or you never realize when you're listening to all these podcasts, is talking this much, man, makes you so thirsty. It dries your voice out like crazy. Ugh. All right, so Elijah Moore, second-round pick last year, high second-round pick. I think he was 34, 35 overall, something like that. Garrett Wilson, number 10 overall. Corey Davis brought in from, he was the free agent they brought in last year. They've got Denzel Mims back there. Braxton Berrios, they signed to an extension this year. Jeff Smith, all the rest of these guys are just kind of bodies in the backfield. But Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson play a very similar role, and that kind of sucks because I think these guys are going to definitely eat into each other. I mean, you look at Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson, they're about the same size, right? I think Garrett Wilson's a couple inches taller than Elijah Moore, maybe a few pounds heavier, but really very similar body types. Corey Davis is the clear outlier here. He's like 6'3", 220 pounds. Like, he's just a monster on the outside. Garrett Wilson is projected to be an outside guy. I could see them putting Elijah Moore opposite of Corey Davis and letting Garrett Wilson work the slot a little bit more this year because it's a little bit easier for a rookie to transition to the NFL in the slot. But I do think that limits Garrett Wilson's potential for fantasy for at least 2022, maybe into 2023. So I know this is probably not going to be a very popular take. Everyone really loves Garrett Wilson, and I love the talent of Garrett Wilson, but I just think that, again, there's too many mouths to feed for this team. Corey Davis was Zach Wilson's #1 target last year when he was healthy, even above Elijah Moore, who people really love. I don't think that Garrett Wilson's just going to come in here and become the instant favorite. I know they might scheme it up for him, but it's up to Zach Wilson to pick where he wants to throw the ball, right? I think Corey Davis is going to eat a lot more targets than people want to admit. So that's my thoughts on the New York Jets. You really can't go wrong. I think all three of these guys, again, the difference between like wide receiver 15 and 30 is nothing. It's almost minuscule. I think that there's a very real chance that all three of these guys are top 30 wide receivers, with a couple of them, with like Corey Davis potentially being a top 15, 20 guy, or Garrett Wilson or Elijah Moore. One of them is going to be very good. I just don't know which one. Again, Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson are I would bet on Corey Davis over both of these guys. And it's not because of skill. I don't think that Corey Davis is necessarily better than either one of these guys. I just think that he's different from these guys. These guys play a very, very similar role, that it could impact. It could eat into the other one's opportunity a little bit on that regard. So if I was a betting man, it'd be Corey Davis, Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore. But yeah, I can see all the arguments for the other two being above Corey Davis, but I just think that if you look back at how many times Zach Wilson really wanted to go to Corey Davis, and he was basically those two in a trust tree together, you know what I mean? So he forced the ball to Corey Davis quite a few times, even when it was a bad decision. So I just don't think you can get rid of that just by drafting a guy at 10. So that's my thought process on the New York Jets. Really love this offense for fantasy football. I think there's a lot of value there. Again, Breece Hall's going really, really high. I think that might be a little bit too high for my liking. Michael Carter's going too low. People are writing him off a little bit too much. So there's definitely some value there, in my opinion. Tyler Conklin, again, some value there. Corey Davis, I think, is some massive value. I think people are writing him off for dead with these other two names that are much more popular. But again, I could be wrong, but, wide receivers, this is how you make your money in the offseason. You bet on someone like Corey Davis. He returns that value that you paid almost nothing for him because you get him for free, basically, right? You pay a little bit for Corey Davis. He outperforms what you paid for him. Then you can flip him next year, if you really want to. This is how you make a lot of value in dynasty leagues, in my opinion. So it's worked a lot for me in the past, so hopefully it'll work for you in your leagues. All right, now the last team is my team, the New England Patriots. Yeah, what to do with the Patriots, man. Goodness. We really, as much as I love Bill Belichick, I respect the hell out of Bill Belichick. Best coach of all time, in my opinion. Dude really needs to give up the GM duties for this team. It's just horrendous the last few years. It is so bad. Like, I love the Devontae Parker move, but I hated Cole Strange at 31 in the draft? Like, what are we doing, man? What the hell was that? Tyquan Thornton went above, I think, George Pickens, Sky Moore. Like, what are we doing? Oh, my goodness. I hated it. I hated it so much. But then he takes guys on the defensive side of the ball, and I love it. It's really, really good. He took Bailey Zappi, though, over Sam Howell. Why did we even take a quarterback? I don't understand. Like, whoa. Whatever. Took another running back in the 4th round. We took another one in the 6th round. Like, it hurts. It hurts my soul. I hate it so much. So, yeah, if Bill Belichick could really give up the GM duties, that would be great. The other thing that scares the crap out of me right now is Joe Judge and Matt Patricia are our offensive coordinators, and Bill Belichick. That is our offensive coordinator for this year. That is awful. We lost Josh McDaniels, went over to be the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, and we decided not to replace that slot. Like, why, man? Why? What are we doing? Oh, goodness, Patriots. It's fun to be bad because I get to hope now that we're going to make good moves in the future, but boy, it is it's not fun, It sucks in the process, I finally understand how the Dolphins and the Jets felt for many, many years, and the Bills. A little bit of a backhanded compliment there, but all right, now let's get into the actual picks here. Offensive line, David Andrews, our center. He has been a rock for us for many, many years. Very, very good center. Cole Strange, new right guard, taken in the first round. Trent Brown, awesome. Right tackle, monster of a human being. Isaiah Wynn, left tackle. Our offensive line is above average. I'll say that. It's not an elite offensive line. Cole Strange definitely helped the hole that we had on right guard, but it's going to be a solid offensive line. It's not going to be elite. It's not going to be bad. It's going to be solid. It's going to be right in the middle of the pack, maybe a little bit above average. You get into the quarterback. We got Mac Jones. For fantasy, Mac Jones is just not exciting to me. He just has no mobility whatsoever, and with the offensive coordinator issues, it's just kind of a nightmare for fantasy football. Like, I don't trust Bill Belichick to call good plays for this team. I don't. And I think that's going to have a direct impact on Mac Jones for fantasy football. I don't think that he's going to be throwing for 30 touchdowns. I think they're going to try and use him as a game manager. And I think that's a mistake in today's NFL. I think with the AFC being as competitive and cutthroat as it is, I think it's a mistake to use Mac Jones and limit him like they did as a rookie. Maybe they'll open him up. Maybe they were just kind of protecting him as a rookie and they were waiting until year 2 to kind of open the offense up for him a little bit. But I don't see that coming with Bill Belichick. I think he's going to be more of a Pete Carroll type of coach on the offensive side of the ball. Run, pass. But I could be wrong, but with the 2 running backs drafted in the draft in the 4th and the 6th round, going right guard in the 1st round, then we got a couple more offensive linemen later on. It's not looking good for the passing side of the ball. So, Mac Jones, I'm probably out on. I think he's going to probably finish as a QB3, maybe QB2. Best case scenario is he's a Kirk Cousins type of quarterback, but I just don't see that in his realm, in his wheelhouse, essentially. Kirk Cousins is really good because he can throw for 5,000 yards. Mac Jones is not going to be doing that. So, Mac Jones, I think, has a QB3 kind of ceiling this year. So, for fantasy, I'm all the way out. In Dynasty, Damian Harris, I'm trying to find a trade partner as quickly as I can. Ramondre Stevenson was the 4th round pick last year. They brought in another 4th round pick this year, Pierre Strong Jr. James White was a 4th round pick. They really like later round running backs, which is kind of becoming more of a trend with modern football, but James White is getting pretty old. I think Pierre Strong is the ideal replacement for him on this team. But until James White is gone officially, Pierre Strong is limited. He's not going to have an opportunity there. Ramondre Stevenson is the Damian Harris replacement. So it's also the Patriots. They just do not use one guy. So I'm out on all the Patriots running backs. I do not want a single one. Same as the Dolphins. I'm out completely. I just don't want these guys for fantasy. I don't want to trust any of them. I'm out. I did take Pierre Strong in the 4th round of a rookie draft lately, just to stash, because if he does manage to hit, which is a long shot, I'm going to flip him so fast it'll make your head spin. But that is my thought on the running back position for the New England Patriots. It sucks, man. I hate being a Patriots fan right now. Our team is just garbage. And I know everyone in the NFL is like, good, you dominated for so long. And I get it, I understand. But I just want to be good for fantasy, at least, for crying out loud. Can I at least have that? Ugh. All right, tight end position, we got Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith was a massive disappointment last year. Hunter Henry was actually pretty good. I think that's going to continue. Maybe they're going to utilize Jonnu Smith a little bit more, but Jonnu just didn't play many snaps last year, was injured quite a bit, and maybe what it was is they had to, recreate they've said for many, many years, Josh McDaniel's system is a little bit more challenging to understand, to get the concept of early in a player's career as they come as free agents. There's a lot more change of verbiage and blah, 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 blah. It takes people a lot longer to learn the new playbook. Hopefully that's just the case with Jonnu Smith, and this year he can break out a little bit. But again, I'm not putting my faith in that for fantasy football. I am putting all my chips in the Hunter Henry basket because he's being disrespected yet again. He was very good. He started to get more and more cohesion with Mac Jones as the season went on. And I think that they're going to take basically last year's playbook and just use that again with maybe a few minor tweaks in the running plays, maybe a little bit more emphasis on the running plays. But Hunter Henry, he was very, very good for fantasy last year because he was just basically an automatic touchdown scorer. He had a touchdown like almost every single week. But I think that he's going to be the primary pass catcher for the team for Mac Jones. And I know that's a bold take, but when you look at our wide receivers, which are also extremely disappointing, it's not that bold. All right, now, again, it sucks being a Patriots fan because our weapons and our offense is just so bad. Our defense is loaded. You can see the list here. You can see it. If you're on YouTube here, if you're not on YouTube, go follow me on YouTube. Dynasty After Dark Facebook page or YouTube page. I've got the R Lads depth chart pulled up here. Our defense is so loaded. It is so good across the board. Like, it's not the best. It's not the best. Our cornerbacks are a little iffy, but it's just a very deep team, right? And our offense is just so bad. Our offensive line is great. Awesome. I like Mac Jones as our quarterback. That's great. Running backs are deep, but why do we just struggle so much at getting wide receivers? I do not understand. They are the lifeblood of an offense. Our starting wide receivers at this point are Jacoby Myers in the slot. Okay, he's decent. I will say Jacoby Myers is probably the best wide receiver on this team right now. And I'm a big Devontae Parker fan. I like Devontae Parker quite a bit, but I can't trust him for fantasy on this team. Kendrick Bourne was very good last year. Devontae Parker was traded from Miami. They got and I do like this trade quite a bit. They gave up a 3rd-round pick for Devontae Parker, which everyone blasted them as being an overpay. But Devontae Parker is like $5 million a year for 2 or 3 years. Like, he is so cheap. And he's a good wide receiver when he's healthy. He is very, very good. So maybe that's what they need. If you look at the guys that they had a lot of burners last year. They didn't really have a jump ball guy because N'Keal Harry was supposed to be the jump ball guy for the team, and he was just never really that good. So Devontae Parker fills a very specific role for the team, and I quite like him. It's just whether or not Mac Jones will target him a lot to make him fantasy viable. I have my doubts. Kendrick Bourne was very, very good for fantasy because, again, he was a burner. He was able to blow past people. He had a lot of those make one play to make your day kind of plays where he'd just burn past somebody, get a touchdown, like a long bomb touchdown, and be fine for fantasy for the week. And Jacoby Myers was the 1,000 paper cuts version of it. So for fantasy, I'm still going in on, if you're in a full PPR, probably Jacoby Myers over Devontae Parker, but Devontae Parker has the opportunity here. It's just whether or not he can, 1, stay healthy, and 2, get enough targets to be relevant for fantasy. I don't know if I trust this team to provide that. So, yeah, it's a rough year for fantasy if you own any of the Patriots. I think the only ones that I'm really willing to roster are Hunter Henry, probably Jacoby Myers, and Devontae Parker, and that's going to be about it. You can take a stab at Ramondre, Pierre Strong, or Damian Harris, but for Dynasty, I think that you're just setting yourself up for failure because they might have hit or miss games in their careers over the next couple of years, but you're never going to be able to trust them. I mean, Damian Harris, if he's a free agent next year, let's say they let him go. You really think that they're not going to bring in another guy in the third or fourth round next year? It's just what they do. So I'm not trusting the running backs for fantasy, for dynasty specifically. I'm not trusting Jonnu Smith. I need to see him do something on the field, anything on the field. I do like Hunter Henry. Mac Jones, I just think is being set up to fail. And again, the wide receivers, they're interesting, I guess, but not great. They are definitely stopgap pieces. If you need to plug a wide receiver in because of injuries or bye weeks or something, you can always do that, but I hate it so much. So yeah, that is my New England Patriots. So that is the end of the AFC East breakdown. Again, like I said, tomorrow I'll be back with the NFC East breakdown, which should be a little bit more fun to talk about for fantasy. You know, at least we got like CeeDee Lamb, you know, Carson Wentz, Antonio Gibson. There's quite a few relevant players in that league. So that is my thoughts on the AFC East. Let me know your thoughts. Again, if you're following on YouTube, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Just help me out there. Tell your friends about the podcast if you like it. And again, I'm working on, I think, next Friday, not this Friday because of the whole, unfortunately, because of the loss of internet this week, I wasn't able to play around with the whole guest setup on my streaming setup here. But I think I've got it very close, and I just need to test it now. And I don't have enough time between this recording, tomorrow's recording, and Friday to get a test done for a guest podcast. But so I'm shooting for next Friday. I'm gonna try and find a guest to bring on and just talk about some random subject. I don't really have an idea just yet. It all depends who we get on, if they have a specialty or not. Spoiler alert there. So yeah, I'm aiming for next Friday, having a live guest. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, roster comments, trade advice that you're looking for. Be happy to help you guys as we go into the off season here. And in the next couple of weeks, after we get through all these roster breakdowns, I'm going to start going into some startup drafts, some rookie drafts, trade advice, stuff like that. So I'm excited for what's to come. Thank you guys again for listening, and good night.